Chapter 5. Forbad and the Unsuccessful Inheritance. The tragic history of merchant Zorab left Badam also very impressed, and, after thanking him for his revelation, he said goodbye to him and retook the road, seeking now for a rencounter with Forbad. Forbad heard Badam's report with much interest and, at the end, he said, "You have just revealed me what I anxiously wanted to know. Now, listen to me, for I will tell you my own story. I'm an only child from a very rich family. When my father felt that his end was near, he called me and said, 'Dear son, my last moment has come. Listen then, attentively, to what I have to tell you. Sooner or later, we all must die, because this is the law of the nature. The death treats everyone equally. To her, between a powerful king and the poorest slave, there is no difference. The moment I will submit to my destiny has finally arrived. After my death, you should not be lamenting all the time, nor become discouraged. Otherwise, you will be contradicting the will of Allah. I leave you, as inheritance, such great wealth, as that no other father, nowhere else in the world, has already left to their children. At the end of his life. Listen now to my last advice. Firstly, never trust anyone that hasn't yet passed through any important confirmation. Secondly, avoid undesirable and bad companies. Thirdly, don't forget that you were born not in this town, but in another one far away from here, and that you came to live with me when you were about 15 years old. As for me, before coming to this place, I had fallen into disagreement with my stepmother and, on a dark night, I left my father's house. Consequently, I don't have any relatives here, for all my relatives stayed in my hometown, away from here. However, after my death, if any of these relatives come forward, he will certainly not be with any second intention. But there is, here in the city, a friend with whom I have always shared my good times in life. If you come to have any difficulties, ask him for advice. So put, in your mind, everything I have just said." With these words, my father gave his soul to Allah, and went away definitively. My father's death caused me deep pain. For several days, I didn't eat or drink, and did nothing but cry. And, while I thus cried, a crowd of no less than 40 people came to me. All of them showed me great compassion, and said that they were close relatives to my father. And then I thought, why has my father deceived me? He said that he had no relatives here in the town. But now, no less than 40 relatives appeared. They then tried to console me, saying that no power was able to move the mountains from its place, to overthrow the celestial dome over the earth, or to compel who has left the earth to come back to the earth, and that all my lamentations and teardrops were in vain. After some time, they began to say to me, "You surprise us with this resignation, staying always at home as if you were a woman. But how come stay home in the middle of springtime? The fields and the gardens spread their pleasant perfumes everywhere. come with us and let's walk around enjoying the pleasures of nature." So we went out for a stroll. They acted so that, quickly, I would forget the misfortune that had just happened to me. We then started to go out together almost every day, wandering around or organizing small parties for which were invited musicians and singers. Influenced by these colleagues, I started to live a dissolute life. In time, I became a real drinker and, for several years, I lived that way. And look where it led me. I ended all the inheritance left by my father. Then I sold my house and all my belongings, and the fun with my colleagues led me quickly to end up all the money raised there, and I soon found myself in the most extreme poverty. Suddenly, I remembered my poor mother and thought, I am going to see what has happened to her after the house was sold. I found her in a very sad situation, living in a very poor cabin, where our maid lived formerly. She was sitting on a fiber carpet and weaving, and when saw me, she erupted into tears and said, "My son, how so quickly, you forgot what your father told you? Do you not remember that he had advised you to avoid bad company, and said that, in this city, he had no relatives? People of bad character led you into temptation, and thus, conducted both you and me to ruin." So, perplexed, I answered, "What are you saying, my mother?" They consider me as a brother, and said that they would be able to give their lives for me. My poor mother shook her head and exclaimed, "Ah, naive son! So you do not know that they live on lies and deceit? Thanks to them, many others have been led into poverty, and now, to satisfy the pleasures of these people, you have been led to lose all your paternal inheritance, and descend to a beggar's condition. And thereafter, they won't even greet you." These words made me very amazed, and then, wanting to convince myself that my mother was speaking the truth, I went looking for one of them. Precisely the one who, of all my about 40 friends, most showed sympathy for me, and always called me his brother. Arriving at his house, I knocked on the door, but he didn't open up for me. I then put myself on standby and waited until he came out. When he came out, after a few minutes, I told him, "What happened, my brother, that you haven't appeared before me since a long time?" But he interrupted me, shouting, "By what right do you call me his brother, if I don't even know you?" Indignant at this so indelicate answer, given by my friend and brother, I added, "Are you not ashamed of pretending so blatantly? I ended up all my riches for our enjoyment together and, because of you, I haven't saved even a penny. Thanks to you, I became a poor man, and now, instead of thanking me for my kindness without limits, what you do is say that you don't even know me. Are you crazy or fallen from the sky? It is the first time in my life that I see you. Get out of here. I've nothing to do with freaks." With these words he withdrew, casting me a contemptuous look. Only then, I could understand what those words from my mother meant, as well as the kind of people that my friends were, and how much they had deceived me. I turned then to my mother, fell down on my knees at her feet and, kissing her hands, I implored, "Forgive me, my good mother, for the injustices I did to you. For not valuing my father's advices, I dragged both myself and you to destruction." My mother then hugged me and, with kind words, tried to calm me down, saying, "Dear son, people don't escape their fates. What is written on their foreheads that must happen. What can you do with these scoundrels, who spend their lives immersed in dishonesty and crime? What do I do now, my mother? Should I go begging for alms in the city? For, although I have lost my riches, I haven't yet lost my pride, nor want to lose my honor. Remember then, my son, what your late father had said to you, before his death. When you are in trouble, go to my old friend, that he will support you. Look for him then, that he perhaps help you in some way.